Ready? Thank you all for coming out for our first policy committee meeting of the new year. And we're gonna get running smoothly and get going. I'm gonna hand this over to our deputy superintendent at Forvin. He'll start with 1.01.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. 1.01 is a resolution to adopt policy on first read for 6920 for food purchases for district meetings. In consultation with our superintendent, we believe that there are certain times throughout the year where we have meetings where it conflicts with either dinner or lunch. The current policy does restrict us in some ways to offering that opportunity for certain meetings. The superintendent is requesting to be able to have the discretion to offer food at a meeting so that we are in compliance with audit procedures. Because right now the audit procedures at times based on an emergency meeting or a regular scheduled meeting, because that's the only time everyone can come,
Right.
we can't have food. And that's really just it's not the right thing to do to our employees.
Absolutely. Comments or questions?
No comments or questions.
Okay. That's our first reading and adoption. 1.02.
Our next item,
We're good. There were no questions on that.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry for
okay.
pulling up for you. Yeah, so 1.02 talks about internet safety. This was a request from a board member at our December
That says
meeting.
library committee.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah, internet safety. This is just a review of some of the components in the policy. For internet safety, 1.02, we were asked to go back to the policy. And the regulation to take a look at the language. And we'll go one at a time. We were asked in the policy to take a look at this specific language. If Mona, you could highlight paragraph 3, which says subject to staff supervision, however.
Sorry.
You don't give it that over your eyes. Just kidding.
On policy 4526, we were asked to take a look at this particular statement. Subject to staff supervision, however, any such measures may be disabled or relaxed for adults conducting bona fide research or lawful purposes in accordance with criteria established by the superintendent or his or her designee.
Thank you. Board members, Mr. Walker, any questions or comments in regards to this?
I think the question, yes, thank you. I think the question that was brought up was absolutely about this paragraph. And I think what people don't understand is what would be a need that a person might have to have this relaxed or disabled. Now, I can tell as a former principal that some of the things that happened with children came under child abuse. And so it had to be relaxed for us to have a superintendent's hearing or whatever and use it that way. No?
No,
So I
we don't
think,
have to do it for that purpose. When we originally adopted this policy, this is not a mandatory provision. It's a provision that you can include if you want to.
Mhm.
And the consensus at that time was, what if somebody on staff needed a certain website but couldn't get to it because of a firewall and went through the process of going to the IT department and having them, allow them to use it, but only them, not everybody.
Well, I think the question was, why would somebody need that?
That was,
Right.
that was
That
the
was
question. That's how. it was-
Oh, because your firewall doesn't allow lots of things in. So it might pick up a word, it might pick up a phrase, and Ed was talking about.
Mr. Fortune.
so I was asked to do the research on this with our network coordinator to find out if this has ever been done before. That was another of the questions.
Yes.
So This, the way we are interpreting it, both Mr. Wood and myself, this is for specific websites. This does not give total open access to anyone to look at whatever they want.
Mhm.
This is very specific. So this is, let's say, for example, a teacher is teaching a certain curriculum unit. And in that curriculum unit, they need access to supplemental material that's in a website. If they don't have access to it because it's blocked, this gives the ITF and the network coordinator an opportunity to research that website to determine why it was blocked. What I was explained to by the network coordinator, there are times when websites are miscategorized. So for perhaps it's categorized as a game, like a video game, when it's really an instructional resource. If after the network coordinator and the ITF do the research and find it to be a valid educational tool, they will open up and reclassify that particular website so the teacher can have access to do the work that they need to do. But it's case by case, it's website by website, and it's really monitored by the ITF and the network coordinator. The other conversation was, why would law enforcement be involved in this? I'm not sure whether I interpreted this way, but this to me says, for other lawful purposes. I would have to request to research it based on a lawful purpose of educating the child, not in engaging with law enforcement. Making sure that what I'm doing, I'm following the law and I'm not breaking any laws by doing this particular research.
For example, a pedagogical purpose, something having to do with teaching a class or researching a subject in order to teach a class. As I said, firewalls have certain phrases and certain things that automatically they will block, and it might be useful or might be necessary for a teacher, for example. A lawful purpose to me is a valid educational purpose. It has nothing to do with law enforcement.
Does that clear your mind, Madam
It
President?
clears my mind.
Right.
What I would suggest is, because this was brought up either in open meeting or an executive session, I don't remember which,
Open meeting.
open meeting, that maybe you put something in the weekly and say, link it to this particular, not thing, but this particular video that we're doing of this meeting, and say, please watch the meeting if you want more information on that.
And if I'm understanding, this is incident specific, correct? Okay, Mr. Walker?
No, I was just going to say, well, aside from what you're suggesting, maybe just add a sentence to it explaining what you just did. And then that way they see it and then, you know.
Sure.
All minds cleared on this? All right, Mr. Forget,
Do we agree that this needs to stay in the policy? Mr. Howard?
I would say yes.
I would say yes.
Yes.
I would say yes, but I think that little addendum will clear up.
I appreciate that.
And be ready to,
And change it to their designee if you're gonna make any change in the policy. Instead of his or her, we're doing theirs.
and I know it's going in a weekly, but be ready at the next meeting. If conversation comes up again. Okay,
Be happy to. Thank you.
all right.
Similar to this inquiry, there was an inquiry on the internet safety regulation, which was 4526.1R. On the regulation,
Oh, that's not offenders.
It wasn't attached.
it wasn't attached. Matthew, you have to go back to the policy manual. And it's on board docs. Just want to make sure we cover all of the questions in the meeting, and I did review the meeting to make sure I knew the questions. Forty-five 26.1R,
When this is redone, will this be easier to get to?
because you authorized us to pay a little bit more to have it done in numerical
Which
order.
is so much
A little
better.
bit wacky, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Where is he? I can go off there, please.
So on the first page, if you go down to number Roman numeral 2, blocking and filtering, if you go down to the third bullet, the computer network coordinator, very similar language because this is the regulation for that other policy. But the questions that were posed at the board meeting in December, has this ever been used
Yeah.
for an individual employee? I'm speaking to the network coordinator. No, it's not been done for an individual employee in the district. So the response is no.
Okay.
And for further clarification, again, it's only used for a specific website to make sure that it's educationally responsible. And that's when the filter is left off, is removed.
Just for that particular
Yes,
website, not
just-
for every,
We would
nobody
nev-
else will have access to anything else.
We would never, ever do
Yes.
that.
Madam President, questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Mr. Walker, questions, comments? Okay, Ms. Ford, next item, please.
Goes to the big man.
The next policy that we're taking a look at with questions was 5450.1.
Do we, Mr. Ford, so
Yes, sir.
do we have the actual questions that were asked? Do you have those, Madam?
I haven't, I just listened and tried to pull it from what it was
Okay,
stated.
because I know some of the questions were very specific that were,
I believe the president asked for the board member to send in the inquiry, but I just pulled from the conversation because I did not receive anything in writing. So on 5450.1, notification of sex offenders, we were asked if the superintendent or his or her designee had ever authorized or allowed a sex offender into the district. So I did some research on this. Our Raptor system is our visitor management system. Over the past 2 years, the 2021-2022 school year, which was last year, there were 0 individuals that popped up on Raptor fitting that category. This year, using Raptor, there were 2, and they were not allowed into the particular building. Digging a little bit further, when could this possibly be an issue? I looked at the New York State School Boards Association guidance document. And there's some guidance in there. If a parent is a level 2 or level 3 sex offender, there's very specific guidelines that we have to follow.
Okay.
And it's not just simply the superintendent makes that decision. There are other people that are involved in it. If the individual is still on parole, the parole officer has to be involved in making that determination.
But the
as well.
superintendent has to approve it
After
if they
we
want
get,
to, if they agree.
after we get the
Yes.
information from the parole officer,
Right.
or the, if there's a restraining order or an order of protection, that's all the data that would be used by the superintendent to inform their decision.
okay,
I've had that happen, just not here.
Is that the same protocol for a student?
Ooh,
And
Madam-
sex offender is gonna be different.
good question.
If a student is a sex offender, I defer to.
Yeah, I don't think it's exactly the same, because the student may be permitted to be in school, because they're a student who's entitled to an education.
Well, can you roll down a little bit on this policy, please? Okay, and keep going, right there. The first bullet, it says a registered student.
Right.
So I think we should be aware of what our role would be if it was a student.
And that can be possible.
And I think it's probably the same in terms of the parole officer getting involved and letting us
And the
know.
superintendent.
Absolutely.
Mr. Walker.
No
questions, comments? Any other comments, Madam President?
No, thank you.
Ms. Ford?
That concludes my answer.
And thankfully, it doesn't happen often.
I love this committee. No, I appreciate everyone coming out, taking the time to be a part of this. Ms. Ford, I want to have a conversation with you in regards to the next steps, how we're going between now and the next meeting.
Sure.
Madam Superintendent, any questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, we're going to adjourn the meeting, 3:15.
Boy, that was fast.